The 18th Conference of States Parties to the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities enters its second day. The session is focused on the importance of involving people with disabilities in decision-making processes, with discussions emphasizing that people with disabilities must be seen, respected, and heard as leaders and not just as an afterthought. The COSP18 opened on Tuesday at the United Nations headquarters in New York with delegates from around the world. This year's theme focuses on enhancing public awareness of the rights and contributions of persons who are physically challenged in the lead up to the Second World Summit for Social Development. We have Jake Epelle, CEO at the Albino Foundation. He's joining me from the United Nations headquarters. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know that you've been attending the conference. Could you briefly talk us through what has been discussed so far, and if any commitment has been made to supporting people who are physically challenged?
I think the whole effort has been focused on socio-political situation of persons with disability as well as socio-economical. And so we're saying that persons with disability should be given their right to participate, whether it's an election or economic development or nation building. The focus has been on looking at the skill sets of persons with disability and people that have really made some valuable contribution in either in economic sector, political sector, as well as social sector. And the focus actually spotlights on social development, inclusive social development of countries that have signed on to the CRPD, and eventually compelling those countries to produce a framework that will provide interventions for persons with disability, not from a handout perspective, but from a inclusive participation in terms of decision making and empowerment. So issues like self-employment, issues like the employment of persons with disability in the workspace. The effort is geared at ensuring that the workspace is inclusive enough to accommodate persons with disability. So you're talking about access to offices, access to areas where persons with disability can work freely. And then the issue of discrimination of persons with disability by those without disability is also on the table.
Jake,
there are a number of, go ahead.
Yeah, on a country level and on a policy level, and as a Nigerian, how do you think these discussions will shape policy or even social development initiatives? It's been 18 years, since this conference has been going on. Every year, they come together to talk about what needs to be done. Would you say we're making progress in Nigeria and perhaps even in Africa?
I think Nigeria plays a very a leading role in terms of inclusivity. We have a very robust best global practice framework that many organizations like ours and several other organizations and some government agencies have produced. And every time we come together in a global setting, Nigeria becomes the pride of the discussion because what we have is workable and it meets best global practice.
What do we have, really? Can you talk us through some of the initiatives that are supporting people with disabilities in Nigeria? Just, to educate our viewers a little bit, because most people sometimes would say it doesn't even exist. We don't care about them.
Okay. First and foremost, we have the law. We have the Disability Act that empowers persons with disability and policymakers to create intervention and to also implement those interventions. So we do have the law. We have the operating mechanism. You're talking about the National Commission for Persons with Disability, which is like a government organ that is set up to drive the implementation of these laws and several policies. We have policies around election, which our organization are in the forefront. We do have individuals or what we call the OPDs, Organizations of Persons with Disability, that are also helping to hold government accountable, but also implement intervention. We have international agencies and international development partners. The EU has one of the biggest investment in disability inclusion. And so in terms of disability inclusion, Nigeria have done far better than other countries, but we still have a lot to do. Today we're talking about access to public building, and we have institutions like Nigerian Institute of Architects, making sure that they are part of either buildings that have to be retrofitted, or clearly we have or produce a ramp that is not in the building. So there is a reasonable progress. We have legislative, and there are more laws that are being made right now to accommodate inclusion in the country. I believe that the government is serious because they have provided a huge resources through the Ministry of Humanitarian and Poverty Reduction.
Right.
When you come out to a conference like this and you compare notes, then you go back and beat your chest to say, we've made progress. That does not mean that we still have a lot of things to do that we're not doing.
Let's talk about one of that lot of things, which is education. Just walking on the streets of Lagos, when someone is disabled, they're condemned to the streets, or education is very slim. The chances of education is slim when it comes to people living with disabilities. I am looking at a report here that says 95.5%. I cannot independently confirm whether that figure is right, because what they're basically saying is that perhaps 1 out of 10 persons living with disability in Nigeria is educated, basically. But it may not be far from the truth. Are there concerted efforts directed at educating PWDs, which is no joke, it's no small feat?
Brilliant question. I'm privileged to say that I was twice. The initial policy on inclusive education I led the entire process of formulating that policy, the first one. And then the reverse one, I also played a critical role because not only do we provide the funding for those the two policies, we also provided the framework and the technical assistance to Federal Ministry of Education. And so today we have the inclusive education policy, contrary to what people think, because people think that inclusive education policy is the policy that is made for either persons with disability or children. No, inclusive education policy is a system, an ideological system that gives access to education of all learners, and I repeat, all learners. So it's not just an education system that is designed for persons with disability, but for all learners, whether you have disability and you don't have disability. Right. But the principle, the underlying principle of inclusive education is that everybody comes into the same class and learn. I am a very strong advocate against special schools. Talk about the school of the blind, the school of the deaf. That has to stop, because what we're doing is we're segregating and alienating people from the community. And so they go to school looking, everybody is blind, everybody is deaf, and they don't know any other thing other than their community. That, to me, is a problem.
Well, we're going to have to leave this conversation there for now, but we know you're still in New York going through this conference till tomorrow, so we'll keep an eye on it, and if anything significant pops up, let us know. Thank you, Jake Epelle, for joining us tonight.
Thank you. You're one of my favorite newscasters.
Thank you.
Keep it up.
Thank you.